Hello, my name is Jordan Ashley Bennett, and this is my cultural immersion experience. Four key elements that I learned from research include common beliefs, attitudes, and values, prominent customs, practices, and behaviors, spirituality and religion, historical events, and figures. Some common beliefs, attitudes, and values. The Hispanic culture really values familial relationships, even outside of the nuclear family. They like to really value their personal appearance. They, want to have respect for the culture, especially the elder members of Hispanic culture want the younger members to really focus on learning what the culture is all about. When it comes to their experiences, whenever they are working on towards immigrating to another country, they will approach others formally unless informal relationships are already established. And they're different from the traditional American family. Traditional American families put a lot of emphasis on time, and they put less emphasis on time and rather focus on spending time with one another. So there really isn't necessarily a start time nor an end time. Prominent customs, practices, and behaviors. They're Roman Catholic. So, as far as their customs go, they celebrate traditional religious holidays, Christmas, Easter, things like Lent, things like that. They have, quinceañeras, which are celebrations for Hispanic girls, and it's a coming of age party. But mostly their world centers around religion. And through my interviews, I learned that that's really the basis for many decisions that are made from Hispanic families. Their religion, they mostly are Roman Catholic. And usually if they're not Roman Catholic, they're Protestant, or a small percentage are considered non religious. And there are still Hispanic churches, even in non Spanish speaking countries, that perform religious services entirely in Spanish or the native language as far as the slang that is concerned. Some historical events and figures they have had, of course, some positive that have contributed to the culture, but they also have had negative. Um, this includes the Alamo, Ponce de Leon, whenever he laid claim to Florida in search of the Fountain of Youth. Um, but overall, St. Augustine and Los Angeles really have a deep Hispanic history in our country today. And still celebrate that Hispanic culture even years later. Some current oppression and some, past historical oppression that they have experienced includes their reference term. And Hispanics, the term Hispanics was adopted years ago, but my research stated that Hispanics are having a hard time accepting it because they want to be called from their native country. So, for example, if they are Mexican, they prefer to be called Mexicans. From Puerto Rico, they, prefer to be called Puerto Ricans. They also, it's reversed where some people just automatically refer to Hispanics as Mexicans, and they could not be from Mexico. And so the reference term was a big topic. They also experience oppression within their cultural group, and that could be differences in cultural norms based on where they're from, some slang that's spoken within the Spanish language based again on where they're from, their skin tones, and especially their native area might be close to another Hispanic native area. The research stated that when, two things constantly rub against each other, it causes friction. And so that's happened to some Hispanic areas across our world. One thing that really stuck out to me was the discrimination that minority populations have felt post COVID. And the study that I found by PEW Research was they took a group of members of the Hispanic culture and gave them a survey. And of that survey, 21% said that they have been told to go back to their home country. 23 were criticized for speaking Spanish in public, and then 20 were called offensive names. This is really heightened post-COVID, and I think that has a lot to do with our political climate, but that's just my personal opinion. Summaries. the events I went to include the events include Iglesia Pentecostal Church and the meeting with the Hispanic Alliance. And some key learning that I got from that was that women seem to be the caretakers in Hispanic society. At the church, the Hispanic women were taking care of the children, the elders. They took care of me as the visitor and just made sure that all of my basic needs were met. And it seemed like the men were serving more in leadership type of roles. Um, I also learned some information about first generation college students as far as their knowledge of resources goes. And it seems to be very slim, simply because their parents are most likely unaware of the resources such as financial aid, um, meal plans, things like that, to help them be successful and have those basic needs met through college. I also was very unaware of the slang in Spanish language. I assumed that there was slang everywhere based on where you were from, but I did not know that it was a point of offense sometimes in a Hispanic culture. My knowledge of Spanish includes 3 years in high school, and I just learned the basics, and I had no idea that there was such a difference in slang based on where you were from. For my agency interview, I chose to focus on the Hispanic Alliance, and it's a group that serves minority populations in the upstate of South Carolina, um, even those that aren't Hispanic. And so their website and the board of directors member that I discussed with said that their overall goal is to really serve minority populations to make sure that they're represented, that they feel seen, and their voices are heard. And they do this by following their 4 community pillars, which includes a focus on education, financial stability, health, and legal. Education includes if they need any type of assistance as far as translating goes, tutors, communication with public schools, student advocates, financial stability. That has to go into play when people are especially buying things like insurance policies, um, you know, housing, things like that. Health goes, they even can provide a patient advocate. And so they're able to really explain what the procedure might be or explain what the doctor is saying in their native language. And they also will fight any legalities that might occur. I'll talk a little bit more about that in some of my surprising information. But Mr. Garcia shed light on that many immigrants that are just immigrating to this country, they often get taken advantage of because the language barrier. And so sometimes that does require legal matters to be pursued. For my individual interview, I focused on Diana, her background. She is um, born from a father that immigrated from Greece and a mother that immigrated from Mexico. And they met when her father was actually on vacation in Mexico. And they decided to get married and they immigrated to the United States right before Diana's oldest brother was born. Their religion, as far as they go, lined up well because they both were Catholic. And Diana's father was completely fine with Diana celebrating Hispanic celebrations along with her mother, and he would join in those celebrations. Diana talked a lot about how she had traditional celebrations like a quinceañera, but her family was so far away and couldn't afford to join. So it was a less of a celebration than you might see on social media or online. Um, she did have some positive experiences with majority culture. She said that she had teachers that were supportive. She had friends that never singled her out. And she felt like, for the most part, when she was at school, that she was just like everybody else. But her negative experiences really started to shed light when she would go home and she would be away from kind of that traditional everyday routine of school. She remembers at a young age working in her father's restaurant because he owned a restaurant, because they had trust issues with workers and they only trusted their kids. And so she didn't get the chance to join teams or anything like that when she was in grade school because She was too busy working. She also said she experienced teachers making assumptions. They knew that her father spoke English, although it was broken English at times. And so they assumed that she had the help to do the homework. But owning a restaurant, Diana said that her dad was never there. She also saw people really talk differently to her mother and father, especially in the restaurant when they realized that they were the owners. She said that she often experienced people assuming that they were workers in the restaurant, but when they would figure out that they were the owners, she said that people's personalities would really change. My emotional reaction was just one of empathy. I did, and um, more understanding. I did not realize the amount of hoops in which one must go through to immigrate to our country. I also just, you know, have a new understanding of Diana and what she went through. It's very different than my story, and it made me really appreciate that my family is so close by. Of course, she's so proud of her culture and she's so proud of her parents. But, there was always that part that was missing, she said. And so it made me thankful that I've always grown up around my family. It also made me think about my role as a school counselor, which I will focus on when I explain a practical application. The gracism principle that I thought of was I will consider you. The reason I thought of this, and there were a few more that I thought were applicable, but this was the most applicable to me. And the reason I thought that was because oftentimes we make assumptions as humans, and you see things in the mainstream media that put immigration in a negative light. And so this project really challenged me to think about walking in the immigrant shoes and thinking about what all they have to go through, and that I don't have to question, when I pay for an insurance policy, and I don't have to question whenever I have a procedure done, because I understand what's being told to me. And so just really looking at that and diving into the emotions that are felt by populations from other cultures really made me want to be a little more considerate. As far as the similarities and differences between my research and the actual events and interviews I did, it seemed like the interviews really brought the research to life. During the research, of course, I knew that the Hispanic culture valued family. Well, I got to see it firsthand. The most surprising pieces of information that I got were about the insurance fraud that many non-English speaking people go through when they enter this country. Mr. Garcia said that he is currently working with a client, through the Hispanic Alliance, that was told that in order to obtain a license, they had to obtain a life insurance policy. And the majority of us being native to the United States, we understand that that's not the case. And so things like that, I just did not genuinely know that things like that happen. I also was unaware of the hoops that immigrants have to jump through. It seems like that there should be a checklist. And in fact, Diana's mother, Carla, said that she wished she would have been provided a checklist, but it seems like every time you feel like you get ahead, there's some more documentation that you have to have. I also want to share how I was personally impacted by this. It shed light on so many of my unknowns. I have realized that I'm very ignorant when it comes to other cultures, and I've got to do definitely like a diligent effort to understand other cultures so that I can be a better teacher, first and foremost, currently, and a soul counselor. It gave me a new sense of empathy and patience for those going through the immigration process. They really have to go through a lot in order to be a citizen of this country. And it makes me want to be more diligent about making non-English speaking students and families aware of resources. And I can start this right away as a public school teacher. Some insights that this experience provided me were that I'm no longer scared to ask questions. I often was scared to ask a question simply because I didn't want to offend someone about their culture, but I'm not scared to do that anymore. I learned that they also want to learn about other cultures, and they also want to share about their culture. it makes me want to take the time to learn about other cultures just so I can gauge interactions appropriately. I may misunderstand what someone did to me or how someone responded to me simply because I misunderstand their culture and I'm not aware. And it also showed me the love that Jesus has called us to show as Christians. We're called as Christians to walk beside somebody rather than walk behind them and critique along the way. And so it really made me want to kind of show the love of Christ, each and every day, and I think I needed that reminder. I think we all need a reminder every now and then, but it really provided the reminder that I needed, that this feeling of being considerate of others is what God has called me to do all along as a Christian. Some specific and practical applications to counseling. This goes hand in hand with my role as a school counselor. I have to meet various needs of students, and that includes me being aware of their culture. I need to provide resources to families, and that includes me being aware of some unknowns out there and making you know, families and students aware of what all they're entitled to. And then just working with one-on-one with students, parents, teachers, administration. I have to be knowledgeable of where they come from. I have to be knowledgeable of their background so that that way I can serve them best. And that way that I can allow them to speak in a way that they need to rather than just kind of speak for them. I think the most applicable thing that I would take with me from this course is what we learned from the Gracism text. I truly loved reading that every week, and I look forward to learning new things. And so that is something that I'm definitely going to take with me along with this experience to be a more culturally accepting school counselor. Thank you.